Okay, so the next thing you're doing is you're going to be painting the rocks, and we're focusing on value. I'm not going to do the entire painting, so you're only going to see the first few minutes of it, so you can get started. So you're going to get 3 little rocks. These are actually scotch taped together, so they stay in place. So go ahead and do that. Mr. Stanford will hopefully have some, he should have some scotch tape or masking tape, whatever. I actually also taped it to the table. I also took a picture of it. Well, it's always preferable I like you to draw from life. Sometimes using a reference photo is fine, and you're going to want to have a reference photo because it's going to take you a couple classes, or it should. Remember, we're focusing on value, all those lights and darks. And I've got a lot of overhead lights happening, so I don't have a lot of shadows. So when you're doing it at your own workstation, it'll be different. Okay, so got my watercolor paper, the water. Everybody has their own water. Remember we talked about that last time? And my watercolors. I have all the colors I worked with last time. I'm actually going to clean those out real quick. Probably should have done that before I started, but you know. And because I took a reference photo of it, I'm going to also, you need to really look closely. Rocks, you know, they're all different kinds of colors. And I don't know if you noticed that the one that I did, it actually has paint on it. That's why blue and purple and stuff. But all right, so I've cleaned out at least some of the wells. It's probably, I don't know if you can see it because I drew it really lightly. You want to use the majority of your paper, so you're going to make your rocks much bigger than they are in real life. You want, I don't want a teeny little tiny drawing. You want to have a decent sized drawing, so, enlarge them. It should be so light that you shouldn't be able to see it. Somebody else shouldn't be able to stand over you and see it, so you really shouldn't be able to see too much of my drawing. It's just to get the basic contour drawing or gesture drawing, just to make sure the stuff is in place. So be very light. You don't want to erase on watercolor paper because it ruins the paper, and then the watercolors act very differently on it. So the first thing, and I am using the round brush because that's what most of you guys have. That's what we have mostly in school. So mix in the palette. Mix in the palette. You always start with your lightest values first. So I'm going to start with, I'm going to mix this using some of this yellow ochre here. You should also have a piece of scrap paper, which I don't know. You should also have a piece of scrap paper to test your colors, by the way, not watercolor paper. Remember, you get one sheet of watercolor paper. So I've got this yellow going, but I need it to be a little more tan. I'm going to take the colors opposite, which is purple. Add a little purple to it till I get a little more browny color. Lots of water is going into this. It's going to be so light on the paper. I'm starting with that bottom rock. And I'm putting in, because watercolor is about building the color. So I'm going to start with some of the darker areas, even though this is super, super light. I'm going to add a little bit of orange to this. It might be hard to tell what you're seeing, but it's a little bit. And then I'm going to add a little bit of brown as well to get some of this. There's some browns in here. I'm working kind of fast. A little bit faster than you should be working. Take your time. Build your color. Focus on all of these lights and darks because they're going. And then you also have cast shadows. Remember, each rock is going to cast a shadow. So basically, I'm going to bring out my brush. I'm going to scoop up some of this water a little bit. Rocks are not all of my rocks had different colors. I really want you to look, which is also a good reason why you should take the photo, because then you can take it apart and really you can really, actually I'm going to do that. I can take my rock and really look at it and see what we have going on here. So I've got a little bit more Here's a little orangey. Here's a little brown. There's a little bit, it's more of a dusty brown, but I'm gonna wring out my brush, scoop up some of the water, and I'm actually gonna just kind of let this dry now, okay? And then maybe, because I'll have taken a picture. So the bottom rock here, I'm gonna get all of these colors in first. Lots of water. Now, the watercolor is not gonna run. If I lift it up, it's not gonna run where the water, sorry, the brush was in my mouth. It's not gonna run where the paper's not wet. So the brown rock, or the black rock, has all these really delicate lines I got going on in here. I like this, this is cool. Remember, we're doing an observation. Then I'm gonna kind of just let that set. And then the next thing I would do, now this is a lot, well, like I said, this rock happens to have paint on it, but I would be focusing on this one with, you know, whites, with black, and making it very gray, because it essentially is a white rock. I'm gonna try to put my rocks back together. The tape is not gonna be good at this point, but I would let this dry. So I told you, watercolor, you have to work pretty quickly, but you also, there's a lot of drying time that you're sort of waiting. And you can work on different parts at different time, because as long as the paint isn't touching each other, it's not gonna run into each other. So you're gonna continue to build the color. It is a slow process. If you just kind of put all the color on at once and you go as dark as you can, it's not gonna look good at all. So you wanna make sure that you are not keeping your brush in the water too, remember? You wanna make sure that so now I'm gonna let all this dry, and I may add a little bit more of this yellow orange to this and keep modeling this rock. And then I'm gonna add the cast shadow. So just so I can show you what it is. So with the cast shadow, you're gonna add, remember, shadows are black, value is black and white. It's not, my rocks are kind of, so the cast shadow, and I don't know if you probably didn't see that, but the water, the black just sort of bled into the color there. My rocks just fell. And I would continue to build this color too. I would never usually have done this, put this next to this color, because this is totally bleeding into the rock color's bleeding into the shadow. Then I would let this dry, and then I would add maybe even another layer of black to add to the shadow. And then on this, it's gonna cast, there's gonna be a shadow between these two rocks. So I would let everything dry and then put that shadow in. You go from light to dark when you're doing watercolor. You put your light values in first, let that dry, either add a second layer of that same color, or you darken the color by adding more pigment, and then go ahead and keep building the color. It takes patience and it takes some time. This is a two, you know, between the practice you did and this one is a good 3 days, okay? Don't rush it. Rushing makes work not necessarily look good, and I would like your work to look good, and you want to, you know, keep building that color, keep building the color. I'll probably keep working on this, but that's what you're going to start doing. Mr. Stanford also has a couple of other step-by-step examples that he can show you as well. All right.